Well, this is the Speedgoat, and I'm a renegade, and I'm a big renegade fan.
Hey, Karl, good to see you.
Welcome to the RUNEGADE Podcast, where we peel back the layers of human potential, showcasing those who redefine what's possible. Today, we are joined by none other than the living legend, Karl Meltzer, known throughout the trail and ultra running community as the Speedgoat. Karl isn't just a name in ultra running, he's a chapter in its history. With 49 wins and counting at the 100-mile distance, he's not just broken records, he's rewritten the rulebook on endurance and performance. His monumental achievement on the Appalachian Trail in 2016 set a new speed record at the time. It was a testament to his old school spirit, a journey captured in Made to be Broken, which gave us all a front row seat to what human endurance can look like. But Karl's legacy goes beyond race results. Since turning pro in 1999, and taking on the role of a coach in 2007, he's been pouring his passion and wisdom into athletes, showing that the real race is often fought in the mind. His unconventional take on nutrition with a nod to the joys of beer and junk food challenges the norms and brings a smile to our faces, reminding us that running should be fun. So on today's episode of the RUNEGADE Podcast, we're delving into the psyche of Karl Meltzer, exploring how he's not only scaled mountains, but also elevated the spirit of ultra running. Welcome, Karl. And remember, as Karl shares, 100 miles is not that far.
Hey, Renegades, we have something exciting to share with you today, and it's all about revolutionizing the way we think about footwear. Enter Poluva, a brand that's setting new standards in the world of shoes. What makes Poluva unique? It's their commitment to foot health, with a design that mimics the natural movement of your feet. We're talking about shoes that give your toes the freedom to move independently, enhancing your balance and strength with every step. Plus, they blend this with style. No more choosing between comfort and looking good. If you're looking to develop stronger, healthier feet, Poluva stands out for its zero-drop design, promoting a natural posture, and their thoughtful use of materials are both durable and kind to the environment. Check out Poluva if you're ready to walk, run, or just stand in a way that your body will thank you for. This isn't just a shoe, it's an upgrade to your daily life. Give your feet the comfort and style they deserve with Poluva. Myself, I've been trail running in the Poluva Strand ATRs. Lightweight, flexible, they really allow your feet to feel the trails. And my feet always feel great after a trail run. We're stoked to have Poluva sponsor our podcast. And as a special offer, you can use the code RUNEGADE for 15% off your order. That's RUNEGADE, and you'll get 15% off your order. And we thank Poluva for being a friend of the podcast. Check them out at poluva.com. Your feet will thank you.
What do you have there in your hand today? I have an ice cold athletic light. I need this over the holidays. All that food, all that goodness. This has only 25 calories and 5 grams of carbs, and it's flavorful. It's a great non-alcoholic brew. Athletic light. Love it.
So whether you're going on a cruise in a boat or sitting on a podcast with the Speedgoat, there's an athletic brew for you.
The goat.
The goat. I'm rocking again the Free Wave Hazy IPA, Hazy IPA. You know, when you like something, you like something. Cheers. Blink. This one's tasty. There's some.
Well, thanks for joining us, Karl. As an amazing guest who taught us and our audience everything you want to know about running, from 5Ks to marathons to some trail running and ultra marathon events. But you are our ultra running OG. Like, this is, we're not worthy. Like, this is unbelievable. Like,
I think the word old is correct, but
We're catching you, Carl. We're catching you. Don't worry.
Yeah, everybody catches up some point, right?
Really appreciate you coming on. I know you have a very busy schedule.
That's nice to be here. Thanks, guys. I'm not really too busy, you know. I work at home for my coaching business, and I run every day and do my workouts and stuff like that. But generally speaking, I kind of live in a dream world.
That's what we all aspire to one day, right?
Right.
To have, you want to be able to choose what you do on a daily basis, and if it involves, working out, coaching, doing the thing that you love, living where you love to live, that's the dream, right?
Carl, you've turned pro, I believe, in 1999. So that's 26 years of a pro runner. But what is the Speedgoat story? How did you actually start with running?
Well, it's, so I'm 57 years old, right? I graduated high school in 86. I was just, to be really quick, I went to Plymouth State College in New Hampshire for a year. I dropped out because one of my buddies wanted to go to one of my friends that I skied with a lot. I was a skier a lot when I was young and a runner in high school. And we started skiing every weekend over at Killington, Vermont. And, we just skied a lot. And my buddy was like, hey, let's go to Big Sky, Montana next year and go skiing. And I was like, yeah, I don't really like school. I think I'll do it. So Andy, my friend Andy, he finished one more year of school, and I just worked at it in Manchester, New Hampshire at a Sears, if you can believe that. Selling air conditioners. But at any rate, I waited for him to get out of his 2 years of school, and then we went to a couple of Grateful Dead shows, the Meadowlands, and we punched it west, and we ended up going to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. That was our end decision where we decided to go, and it ended up turning out we ended up in Salt Lake City at Snowbird and Alta because of expenses to live and that kind of stuff. And I stayed there 1 year skiing. I skied 120 days that year. Every day I was a busboy in the evening. But then that summer, the plan was sort of like, well, I'll go back to New Hampshire, get a job, or, go back to school or whatever. And I was like, I'm not going back to the East Coast. So I started running around the mountains of Utah, around Little Cottonwood Canyon, Snowbird Alta, basically. And I was hooting and hollering and loving it and that kind of thing. I just was thrilled to be in the mountains. And, I looked around for some short races. My very first race was a race up Snowbird, classic hill climb. I won the race. So like that was sort of like the very first race. Like, hey, this is pretty fun. And so I basically focused my entire world around running in the summertime and skiing in the winter. And I got pretty good at it, and I won a bunch of early smaller races in Salt Lake. Then the next big step was the Pikes Peak Ascent, which of course is a big race. And then the marathon, the Pikes Peak Marathon, was the next step. I wondered why anyone would ever want to run down Pikes Peak, but then I figured out why when I ran the marathon. And I think the first year I ran it, I was 15th place or something. So I did pretty well. And one of the friends that I worked with at a restaurant at Snowbird was her husband had run the Wasatch 100 a number of times. And she said, hey, you should go run the Wasatch 100. I was like, are you kidding me? Who runs 100 miles, why would you do that? But, I entered the race in 96, and that was my very first ultramarathon. So I jumped right into the 100, go figure, right? And, I trained. I probably only ran 35, 40 miles a week, but it was all a lot of vertical gain stuff. It was a lot of mountain running, tough technical stuff. And I ended up coming in 28th. My last 25 miles was an absolute death march from hell. But I finished, right? And when I finished, I was like, of course, like most people say, I'll never go back and do it again. 2 days later, where do I sign up? That was the standard. That was the deal. And that sort of got me into, wanting to do Wasatch every year. We looked around for other stuff like there was a Fila Sky Marathon in Aspen in 98 that my buddies and I ran, which there was actual prize money. Not that much, but at any rate, we went to that race in 98, and then 3 weeks later, I ran Wasatch for the third time, and I won the race and broke the record, which, I didn't expect to do that. I'd hoped to do well, but, I ran and broke the record, which was, oh my God, people at work asked me, how'd you do? I'm like, well, I won. And they looked at me like, wow, it's amazing. So that was in the fall of 98. And then in 99, when you said, I became pro, I got a phone call from a guy named Scott Tucker, who was the president or CEO or whatever of Montreal at the time. And Montreal was sort of moving into the ultra world, trail running world. They had all these ambassador athletes, about 100 of them. But I was sort of on the elite team because I was faster than most. Scott Jurek was on that team. Hal Kerner was on the team. Ian Torrance, Dave Terry, a bunch of names. And if you want to call that pro, I mean, I got free shoes, I mean, they didn't really give me anything in terms of like real cash or anything like that. But at the same time, I was excited, I'm like, oh my God, I'm a sponsored athlete. Kind of got hooked up with Power Bar a little bit at the time from a friend. And then in 2000, I had a bit of a back injury. I wasn't able to run that much, but in 2001, I ran the Hard Rock 100. Go back for a second. I ran Hard Rock in 99, but I ended up dropping out at mile 92 because my body was destroyed. And 2000, I was injured. 2001, I went back to the race, and it was in the same direction as when I dropped out. And I won the race, broke the record by 3 hours. And that was sort of the beginning of, I mean, if you want to call it professionalism, but when I did finish the race, I went back to my snowbird resort. I work behind the bar. These two girls sit down, and these happened. It's just funny. I had a Red Bull that I was just on my counter on the bar, and I had it open, and I was heading to the Crown King 50K or 50 mile that spring, and the next spring, and this girl said, "What are you doing with that Red Bull?" I said, "Well, I'm running this 50K or 50 mile race, and I'm de-fizzing it so I can put it in my water bottles." That's something we did then, I guess. And she said, "Hey, so you run races?" I said, yeah. Last year I ran Wasatch 400. I broke the record, blah, blah, blah. Turns out these two girls are from the Red Bull Wings team, the two girls that drive around in the vehicle with the can on the back and hand out Red Bulls, right?
Aston Mini, right? Or whatever it is.
So I'm talking to these girls, not thinking anything about it really, but they're like, "Hey, you should talk to this guy, Mike, who's the marketing guy here in Salt Lake." And so they set up an appointment for me to talk to this guy, and I didn't really know what to expect. But by the time I went to actually speak with him, this was about 2 weeks after I had broken that Hard Rock record. So there was a center piece in Sports Illustrated magazine when there still was paper magazines, of me kind of open my arms, like, where are all the photographers? Because there was like 6 cameras lined up at the finish line. One was National Geographic, one was Sports Illustrated, and then a couple others. And my photo of me running across towards the finish line with my hands open, like, where is everybody, was just a cool shot, in Silverton especially. And that sort of started my relationship with Red Bull. Like, oh man, we need to we need to hook up with you. We need to sponsor you. And again, it wasn't really about paying me cash. They were like, well, we'll cover your travel. And for me at that time, I mean, when I go to a race, I'm sleeping in my car or my truck, scumbagging it, rolling out of my truck, running the race, rolling back in my truck and driving home, and spending as minimal money as possible. But that was sort of the very beginning of Red Bull. And, Montreal was still there. I think Montreal paid me then. They paid me $500, and they paid me $1,000 a year. I mean, nowadays that's like, you can't even get on a plane, right?
Right.
But that was sort of like the beginning of what you might call professional. And then Red Bull eventually paid me a little more, had an actual contract. Montreal, same thing. And again, my focus was still the same as it was in the 90s. I still just was like, I'm going to run all summer. I'm going to work as little as possible. During the winter, when I was a bartender, I saved quarters in an Cuervo 1800 bottle. Each bottle was good for about $125 in quarters. And I purposely saved them. And at the end of the season, I'd have like $1,200 in quarters. And I'd go dish them out at the bank, and I'd cash them in, and I'd use that money to go to races. And, I saved up a few other dollars too. But that was really how I got into the ultra running, of just, I saved my money. I worked as little as possible in the summer, but in the winter I worked those 5 days a week, and I didn't go out. I didn't spend money. I skied every day, So that's kind of how I got into it. And then, I started winning a lot, and, I started running a lot of hundreds every year, like 600s a year on average or so. And I was winning a lot of them. 2006, I won 6 of them that year. And so then I was sort of on top of the game. Scott Jurek and I were sort of, I kind of like to think Scott and I were sort of the pioneers of, I don't know if it's called professionalism, but pioneers of like getting ultra running going in the country. Scott had a more of an influence than I did for sure, because the Western States is just bigger. But that really, that was kind of the beginning of what made it bigger. And then in 2000, I think it was 7, Montreal, we just didn't align very well. And I just kind of we kind of parted ways. And I asked Buzz Burrell, you might know Buzz. I asked him, I knew him as a friend, and I said, hey, can you hook me up with La Sportiva? And he said, yeah, we can probably talk something. So we had I talked a little bit with those guys, and we worked out a contract and that kind of thing. And in 2008, I wanted to run the Appalachian Trail. So they threw some help that way for me. And then another company called backcountry.com, which you may know of. The two guys that started that company worked in room service at Snowbird where I worked. So those guys came to me. It's a crazy story. They came to me and they, hey, we want to sponsor you next year. We want to do something. Is there any, I said, how about we do this thing called Where's Karl? And I'll go do the AT and we'll blog and we'll give prizes out and this, that kind of thing. We'll put it on. The internet was just starting to kick. And so they were like, for some reason, they actually agreed to do it. And I was like, oh, okay, so now I got to do the AT. So that conversation started. And then 2008, I went to the AT and I'd been on the AT a lot because I grew up in New Hampshire, but I really didn't know the whole AT. I just looked at the maps and figured it out. Where am I going to be every day and that kind of thing. And although, long story short, after 14 days, I was injured. I didn't break the record, but I still finished it. And that was sort of that was an amazing experience. Who gets to run the AT, run, hike, whatever, and have a support van and all that kind of stuff? I was trying to break Andrew Thompson's record at the time, which was 47:13, I think, and 47 days, 13 hours. And, he didn't really have a record of his times or anything, or where he was every night or anything like that. It was all on a piece of paper, Then after I was not successful in 2008, I said, I'm only 41 years old. I need to go back to racing so I still stay relevant in the racing world. So I did that. And I ended up, I went over to Mont Blanc to run UTMB. And I got it. I think it was 2007 or 2007. The years are so far behind me, but it's about then. And I went to UTMB. I was running the race. I had run a lot of hundreds that summer. I got to the front of the race, to the lead of the race, very briefly, about mile 75 at a place called Lake Champex. And I passed a guy named Nico Mermoud. Okay. And Nico had been leading the race. He went out really fast. I passed Nico. I passed Marco Olmo, who was the eventual winner. And by the time when I got to Lake Champex, Scott Jurek had dropped out. He's cheering me on, go, 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 go. And when I left Champex, I started to go up a climb called the Bovine Climb. And someone threw a couch on my back or whatever happened, but all of a sudden I slowed down. And, I ended up dropping out. But at the end of the day, that was all over. Red Bull covered my expenses, which to me was like the greatest thing in the world. I come back to the States. The next year, I get a phone call from just you could tell it was a foreign number. It was like plus 50, 15 or something, all the numbers. And I don't typically answer a phone call like that, but I picked that one up, and the phone call changed my life. That phone call was Nico Mermoud. He says, hey, Karl, do you remember me? I was at UTMB, it's his French accent. And and he's like, I have this bag. I have something to show you. I don't want to, interrupt with your sponsors. I said, what do you got? I wasn't really thrilled with the shoes for Sportiva. Great company, but wasn't really working for me. Nico brings over a bag of shoes to my house, and they were the very first pair of Hokas, which I still have. Fortunately, Nico's foot size was the same as mine. That's another Twilight Zone moment. And so I put them on my feet. I ran around the block. They looked really silly, really funny, big fat stack, But I was like, man, these things are comfortable. And I said to Nico, can I have that pair for a little while and I'll run in them? And he's like, we had a tug of war to get them out of his hands because it was the only pair that he had. But he did give them to me that day, and I started running in them, and I was just like in heaven because they're just so comfortable compared to what I was running in before. And I said, after a couple months before I ran Zane Grey in April of that same year, I said, hey, if you pay me what Sportiva paid me, which was $5,000 a year, I don't care when you pay me, just we'll figure it out. I'll jump ship and jump on Hoka. And again, another decision in my life that changed my life. I mean, you understand, everybody understands now, right? But I tried to get another pair from Nico because, I was wearing them out, right? And eventually I was going to wear them out. And I was able to scrape a pair of 9s up, which were a little small, but I took the insoles out, made a little room. Then I went and ran Zane Grey 50, which is a very rocky, technical kind of race. Hokas are, again, they're not on the market yet or anything. I show up at the registration to get your number, pick up stuff, pack and pick up whatever. And I had those shoes on, and people are looking at me. I'm like, what the hell are those things? Still have that pair too. But, I ran the race in them, and there was Scott Jaime was a friend of mine. He was the best competitor at that day, but I had 40-minute lead on him at about mile 40, something like that. And man, I love the shoes. They were great on the rocks. When I came to a huge dead tree over the trail, I reached up and climbed over. The branch broke. I fell back and broke my arm.
Oh no!
Like my arm was still dented. It was a pretty nasty break, and I was just like, yeah. So I walked to the aid station 4 miles, and Scott still hadn't caught me, but my arm was jacked, and so I dropped out of the race, and I went to the hospital. They shot me some morphine, which was wonderful, and then I just sat there, and my arm got healed up and all that. But at the end of the day, what happened there is Hoka's trying to get onto the market. Here's Karl Meltzer leading this race, and he falls in this race with these big, fat, clunky shoes, and everybody thought that was the problem. So Nico and Jean-Luc Diard, the other founder, were, they were afraid that that's it. Hoka's done. Nobody's going to like these things. It was the time of the barefoot, craze too. So it's the exact opposite. But, I tried to explain to people because blogs were big then too. So I explained to people like, listen, I was climbing over a tree. Had nothing to do with the shoes.
Yeah.
And then Nico and Jean-Luc were able to get them in Boulder Running Company, selling them 700 pairs. And then I was able to get them in 2 stores in Salt Lake, only 50 pairs each, but they bought them, and they sold out of those shoes before they were even in the stores because I was saying, hey, these things are awesome. And then woof, off they went. And then, eventually 2 years later, they end up talking to Deckers, and they do their thing with Deckers and all that. And once Deckers came over or, took over, then there was cash because Nico and Jean-Luc were just about down to their last penny when Deckers took over.
Hey, Renegades. A big part of the Renegade podcast is sharing with you, our listeners, the stuff that works for us. And we have an excellent friend of the podcast, Path Projects. Founded in 2018, they're focused on functional designs, innovative materials, and apparel that looks great in the city and gear that excels on the most grueling of trails. They offer a complete range of technical gear and apparel for today's modern athlete. And they're constantly innovating. They brought us their Graves PX Shell running jacket, a whole new lineup of technical tees featuring their Tensolite T19 jersey material. It's soft, the perfect fit, and it just performs. They brought us their Wadi collection, ultralight meets UV protection, offering a tank, a tee, and a hoodie. And now, most recently, the Montera collection, a jogger and a hoodie. All-day sweats with serious performance chops, ultra soft 4-way stretch fleece, allowing you to smoothly transition from daily wear to cool weather training. And we'd like to thank Path Projects for being a great friend of the podcast. And for our listeners, use the code TRP10 for 10% off your order for a limited time.
Like I say, I live in a dream world, but the truth is, it really is true because when Nico called me that day, I never would have picked up that phone, right? The shoes, I just always liked the soft shoe. Montreal had a shoe called the Vitesse, which was very soft compared to others. And I loved that shoe. I didn't run anything for 7 or 8 years with that company because I just loved that shoe. And, and then as we moved forward, once Deckers took over, I lived in Salt Lake City at the time, and there was an outdoor retailer show every year. And, every year I'd go down to the show and shoot the shit with people and that kind of thing. And Hoka was there for the first time that one year. And I'm standing at the Hoka booth, just talking turkey about shoes or whatever. And I'm talking to this other guy, Jim, standing next to me. He's a little bit older than I am. And he's employed, as far as I knew, employed by Hoka. Didn't really know what his role was. Jim and I went for a walk to take a break or something to get something to drink, whatever. And I said, man, wouldn't it be cool if we had like a Speedgoat shoe and we take that to the market, we'd name it after me and da-da-da-da. And Jim's like, hey, man, that's a really good idea. He's like, let's do it. Turns out 10 minutes later, I go back to the booth and Steve Doolin, who was one of the top guys at the time, he's like, that was the president of Hoka. And I'm like, no shit. Right?
Selling
like,
right to the top.
I just agreed to make this signature shoe with me. I'm like, you're kidding me? So I didn't know where that was going to go. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, whatever. Like, yeah, we'll give you $2 a pair. And it's too bad it's not $2 a pair. But, but at the same time, he was all in, and it's like all of a sudden the wheels started turning on that. I mean, it takes a few years to produce something like that. And so I had, I talked to the shoe designers. We started talking about stuff. And I'm not a shoe designer. I can only throw in my 2 cents, right? And say, you guys do it, But they made the shoe, and we had a little agreement, which was perfect, which was fantastic for me. And I was like, now I don't know if it's the number 1 selling shoe in the world, trail shoe, but it's up there. That's the dream world part of it, is that, a lot of stuff was falling in my lap, like in terms of like just good fortune, we'll call it. And I think, that was the biggest thing. That, again, it changed my world. The phone call changed my world, and the shoe changed my world. And, it's like, oh my God, I get this check in the mail for that. So yeah, it's just, I don't even know what to say. And here we are in 2024, 2025. And, I'm still running for Hoka. It's really cool that they've supported me this long. Granted, I'm a lot slower than I used to be. I can't race at the front. But now my goal is to get 100 hundreds, and I'm getting closer. I got 14 to go. But they've supported me in a really, really big way over the last number of years. And of all the sponsors that I had, the companies I've worked with, partners, it was always Red Bull was always the biggest, because Red Bull would do anything for you. They're like, you want to go to Colorado train for a month? Here's some cash, go. They don't have there's no budget with Red Bull. So they were fantastic. But Hoka supporting me through now is like, it's a blessing and honor. Call it what you want. I hope that I can stay with them until I get to that 100 hundreds. And I think I will be able to, but what they've done for not just me, but the entire running world, they changed the running world. Goes from this little flat, everybody's running around barefoot in little skimpy shoes, to the exact opposite. Now every shoe company seems to be following that role, that route. And my other small sponsors, Ultraspire and Drymax and First Endurance, those 3 people have also stayed with me for 20 years. And I've always been the kind of athlete that I don't bounce around. I've never had an agent. I don't feel having an agent is, it's okay for, if that's your role, if that's your deal. But I always felt like this is what I do. I run and I race. I don't think of myself as an influencer. I think that's kind of silly, funny. Hey, good for you if you can do it. But that's never always been about performance for me, because I started when it was about performance. It wasn't about how many likes you get on Instagram and how many, that kind of stuff. My coaching business started with backcountry.com in 2008. They got all of us websites, just simple websites with our name. And I started coaching, and that sort of moved me into that. And that's backcountry.com. If they wouldn't have given us a website, where would I have gone there? But it was really easy for us to do that. So they helped us, and all the athletes that they sponsored they helped all of them get, more notoriety and that kind of thing. The internet obviously is amazing, right? It changed the world. There's no more, no more paper print, looking for Ultra Running magazine, hoping you get the name in the magazine. Now it's just like everything's online. But to think where I'm at now, I made a career out of running, right? How many people have really made have made a living out of it and a comfortable living. I mean, that's not too comfortable, but it's pretty comfortable. I mean, Scott Jurek has, and others have too, but I never thought I was going to do this. When I went to Plymouth State College, I met a friend who I went skiing to Jackson Hole to Salt Lake to turn into a mountain runner. I mean, that was not the business plan. It just kind of happened that way, but it just kind of fell into my lap, and it's just now I live in a place, Ridgeway, Colorado, which is near where Hard Rock is, and I live in this cool house. I have this piece of property, and I just, like, every day I wake up and I'm like, I kind of pinch myself. Like, what am I going to do today? Well, I got to walk the dogs this morning, and I work for a while with my coaching stuff, and I'll go for a run for a couple hours, and that's usually in the San Juans, at least in the summertime. I fumble around my house and make a fire at the fire pit. So
That's awesome.
yeah. So it's good. Life is good.
Karl, that's amazing. There's so much to unpack there, because I think this speaks to the element of who you are. You talked about having good fortune, good luck. I say that the trail gods have smiled on you, right?
Yes.
You've had a long career, but I would also say that maybe Hoka knew you had the best trail running name of all time, the Speedgoat. That's why they wanted that shoe named after you. Is like, hey, you're a good runner, but this is a great name. Where did the Speedgoat come from?
Yeah, the name is brilliant.
It is.
I have to say, I mean, where the name came from is also kind of funny. My friend of mine, Scott Mason, a friend of mine I met at Snowbird, who also ran Pikes Peak a number of times. He and I and another friend, Dan O'Connor, were driving home from Pikes Peak Marathon one year, and we're just driving home. I'm 70, and we're cruising along. We're just shooting the shit in the car or whatever, and Jackrabbit, like a roadrunner kind of thing, ran across the road. And it was kind of funny because there was a shoe from Fila called the Escape Goat. And that was the shoe that we were wearing in the race. We liked that Fila shoe at that time. Anyway, we're going along, and I was like, this thing runs across the road. I'm like, it's a Speed Goat. And and Scott and I just, like, three of us started dying laughing, like, oh my God, why don't someone name a shoe called Speed Goat? That is brilliant. So it really, I mean, this is like early 90s, and so I just kind of bottled that up a little bit in my head, and I'm like, that's a brilliant name. And then the Speedgoat name was sort of like put in a jar to rest for a while, and then I think it was 99 that Zane Grey, the race director, instead of putting Karl Meltzer on the list, it was Wasatch Speedgoat. That was my name on the race, right? So, and that's sort of where, I mean, that's where it was born. And then, again, I sort of bottled it up, but then I started thinking, man, it'd be cool to kind of do something with this, So crazy. I mean, I'm like I said, I couldn't even get the audio going with the computer, right? So I go online to try to figure out, how do I trademark this name? Like, what do you do, right? So I go online and I Google it, and I'm like, I go to a company called Trademark. It's just a simple, how do you trademark this thing? And I wanted to trademark the name Speedgoat. And so I go through the little process. I pay my $10 initially for what it was. And you get I think you got 15 minutes to talk to a lawyer for free for the money you paid or something. So, and he's like, well, what you really should do is you trademark this under Class 35, which is Athlete Endorsement Service. I had no idea like that was the thing, other than you hear about the Air Jordan, right? But I don't know if that's his deal, but that's the class that it's trademarked under. So technically, if you want to, want me to endorse something, whatever, then I've got a trademark, then I can charge you or whatever. I mean, that's just the basics, but I sort of just said, I'm just going to hang on to that. I'll make sure I keep it maintained so it stays live. And you have to show that you're using it on something, to keep the trademark. And then we're starting to use it with Speedgoat shoe. And that was like, I mean, done deal, right? So, yeah, I mean, that's, I don't know if you want to say that fell into my lap, but I mean, I had no idea how to trademark anything.
That's the best 15-minute conversation with a lawyer ever.
I know, right? And he didn't even charge me any money. So I just had to pay my fees. I mean, I think at the end of the day, to trademark that name was about $1,500 or something. At the time, that $1,500 was a lot of money to me. But I was just like, I'm doing it, and if it fails, then whatever. It's not the end. I'm not going to die over $1,500. So that happened, and then I went to trademark other classes, a couple other classes too, because kind of protect myself with the shoe and with the socks and things like that. And now, obviously, after all these years, now it's been 15 years, and now it's you have to every 5 years you have to like renew something. But now this time, the last time I renewed it was I think 2 or 3 years ago, and now it's for life. So now it's like, well, I guess I'm Speedgoat. So
Can't change your
yeah,
name, Karl.
who's done that? Like I mean, Scott Jurek and I always have the conversation every time I see Scott, and he's like, man, you really did it right, man. I'm like, I mean, you can't trademark Jerker,
You could try. You could
Trade
try.
Jerker, you can trade Jerker, but this is an inside nickname. But you can't trademark the Meltzer shoe. That's like, it doesn't sound good. The Speedgoat has that ring to it, and it's like anything else. Like Air Jordan has a ring to it too, right? I mean, there's no question about that. I mean, we'll see if Tara Dower trademarked Candy Mama, because I think that's.
We're hoping.
Well,
We're hoping.
I have already talked to Tara about that. I'm like, you might want to look into something like that. But yeah, I mean, that was like, how did that happen? But now it's protected, so like, now I'm just walking the dogs in the morning and doing my thing.
So when you're out trail running with Scott, does he ever ask you that question? Like, because you can't really, you did actually make up your trail name unintentionally.
Yeah.
Like Scott Jurek from his book Jerker. That was his nickname.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, Karl, like, can you give me a better nickname that I can trademark or something? Or does that come up in that kind of conversation?
I think Scott had a ton when the Brooks Cascadia came out, right?
Yeah.
Scott had a ton. He had as much input on that shoe as I did on the Speedgoat shoes. It just wasn't his name. It just wasn't his. He didn't go down that avenue to try to do that. But like anything else in life, like these random situations, Speedgoat, this thing, Roadrunner crosses the road, he called it a Speedgoat. Like, they kind of clicked, something like that just has to have a ring to it. And for some reason, I was fortunate to just randomly say that, and it just came out and it stuck. And then the Goat Man image that I have just came from a picture in a magazine. It's now been 35 years since I saw that photo in the magazine, and I cut that. It's funny. It was I think it might have been Runner's World or Trail Runner magazine or something, but it was just a photo of this goat, and I was like, that thing's cool. So I cut it out, and it was sitting on my shelf in my basement for like 10 years and never moved. And I'm like, what can I do with this? And that isn't a trademark. That's just an image. It has nothing to do with. There's no protection on that thing at all or anything. But
it's a great image.
But it sort of was like a cool image. So I just said, I'll just bottle that up too, But now we're trying now I've tried other avenues. Like our Speedgoat trail running store is sort of in limbo at the moment. Just it's a long story, but what's next, right? Like, what do I do next? Like I said, my running goal would be to finish 100 hundreds. I'm not going to be fast, but when I reach that 100 mark, there won't be an elite athlete on the planet that's going to reach 100 hundreds. I think there's 33 or 34 people that have done it, but not like an elite athlete that's won. Like I've won 50 times. Yeah. Like if I win just one more, then I'll have majority vote. Right. So it's kind of an outside goal of mine. And if I do that, then that'll be the comment that I make probably. But who's to say if I win another one or not? I don't want to I'm not out to cherry pick a race. My goal now is to run races that I haven't really gotten into yet that are good. Like I'm in the Cascade Crest Lottery. I Am Tough is a great one. Vermont's a classic. There's a number of classic hunters that I haven't run. So I'm going to try and do at least those to sort of like, if you want to call it, finish off my career. But I hope that the 100th 100 is Wasatch, which was my first.
That was your first.
So we bookend them, and hard to say if I'll run another one after that, but yeah, probably will. But the addiction is strong, like it's some days I go out running, I feel I'm tired, I'm lazy, I'm just like, I don't want to run. I start walking because I walk a lot now, but that's still good. But then there's some days, today was like the best run I've had in a long time. Only 7 miles, nothing spectacular, but man, it felt good, and I almost felt like, man, I can still do this. So I'm going to keep doing it until I drop. I mean, I don't know anything different. The only problem with it now is I get nothing done around my house because when I get done my workouts, I'm kind of tired and I don't get stuff done. But that's okay. That stuff can wait, till I'm 80.
Absolutely, you can wait. Well, such a prolific running career and multiple hundreds in a year. Like you start to see the evolution of trail running and ultra running. And we'd love to understand your vantage point from when you started to what you see now. I would say that old school in the mind of as a trail runner, in the best of manner, from both endurance and performance. Like, what was the secret? Like, you know what? I've read that you enjoy a couple brews, you love your Red Bulls, some junk food, all the fun stuff to make
KFC. I think I saw in there in your one video.
Yeah.
I mean, you see what like the races, what they're doing nowadays with David Roach and the science of running and trying to like science a win in it. But you are the all-time winningest 100-mile runner. Juxtapose. How do you understand that? How do we come to terms with your experience and over the years?
Yeah, I mean, things obviously have changed. I mean, David, like what he did this year, and David is kind of the scientist. He's into that. There's a lot of runners out there that are so into the science that, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. David proved. I mean, no doubt. But then you look back to myself, who would drive for the race, sleep in the car, roll out of the truck. According to the New York Times, I ran the entire AT on beer and pizza or something.
That's what it is. I remember
something like that. Not quite the truth, or candy and pizza, or whatever it was, candy and beer. But I think back in our day, none of us were making any money. Nobody really made any money doing it, So we showed up on the line and we wanted the race, I'm like Hal Kerner and Scott and I and like Ian. Those guys are like my best friends still, I mean, we met, it was like we're instantly good friends, but we just wanted to go out and race, and it was really no bullshit. I mean, gels were just starting to come to the market in early 2000. I mean, the first race, and step back to 96, I had 6 of those. You guys probably aren't even old enough. Six power bars that were like bricks, and in my little fanny pack I had on there. And those things were, I mean, you couldn't even bite them.
We're not that young, Karl.
All right. Well,
young.
But the thing is, like, we're running around with those things. And then, like, when I got to Hard Rock in 2001, when I won that time, I ate only gel across the board. I think they were power bar gels at the time. I think I ate like 50 something of them. And I kind of refined, like, I had 16 minutes of downtime. I was kind of refining, like, how can you can do this on these gels. You don't need all this special food and stuff. And that was the beginning. I mean, that's just how we did it. There was no science behind any. There was no research on Google of how to do this. And, I know that Scott and I know that Hal and those guys weren't, nutrition fanatics. I know Scott's vegan. I mean, he grew up on burgers and hot dogs, but he's certainly not eating burgers and hot dogs now. But Scott, I don't think even really got so into the real science behind it. He's just vegan, learned how to be vegan and eat that healthier food. And that's fine. I mean, for me, I'm like, it's all bullshit. Just run, just go do your shit. Just do your thing. Like, quit being a wuss, quit complaining. Don't whine about stuff. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, you're out running around the woods or the mountains or the deserts or whatever, and you're supposed to enjoy it. So we were really mostly into enjoying it. I think now, as time has gone by, the professionalism is certainly the forefront now. I mean, you're looking at the fastest guys. You got Killian and Jim and Hayden and so many other runners that are really fast. And, everybody's making a salary now, and they're just popular on the Instagram, and like Courtney and now Sarah too. It's really more professionalized. I think, there's some missing parts and pieces, like including like drug testing. I mean, that is like, we don't need to get into that, but at the same time, it's like that didn't exist back then when we did it. Like, what was that? I was like, huh? we would rather like to race and just have a few beers afterwards. And we hung out in the mountains for a couple of weeks around Silverton, and we camped for Hal and Ian and I camped for 3 weeks up at a place at 11,800 feet up by Red Mountain Pass. We call it Speedgoat Point. And we would every evening we'd go up on this one spot, and I like to play golf too. I'm a golfer. Ian and Hal were not, obviously, the way they hit the ball. But we go up there, we tee it up and hit the ball towards this pond about the size of the green and go retrieve them. And we just have fun. It was mostly about having fun. Not so much about, I need to taper this perfectly way and I need to train this perfect way to do stuff. We just mostly went out and ran hard most of the time. There's all things about, periodization and, hard runs, easy runs, tempo, all these kinds of things. And I'm not knocking that at all. I'm just saying that we didn't do as much of that as I think runners do now. I mean, we're seeing people get a lot faster. I mean, that 26:39 that I ran in 2001 in Hard Rock was, no one's ever going to touch that in your lifetime. No one's ever going to beat that. And I was like, I could have shaved a few minutes off. Now it's 21:31, right? I mean, 5 hours faster. So the guys that are really getting into the science, there's no question that is helping and making it better. The shoes are better. And we talk about the super shoes and all that kind of thing. I think those mostly apply to road as more than trails, but at the same time, the equipment's better, the packs are better, the nutrition's better. So we're going to see times come down, and you're getting faster runners, collegiate runners. Like Jim is a great example, because Jim Walmsley, when he first ran Speedgoat one year, and he's like, "Hey, I'm Jim Walmsley. Can you let me in the race?" I was like, "Well, I don't know who you are, man. Like, you got to pay the $100, So I made Jim pay the $100 that first year. And this was when he very, very first started. And he ran Speedgoat, and Speedgoat is a hard race. He blew up. He came in like 20th or something, did all right. But he turned into a different runner, right? Like he came from a track 13:52 5K kind of speed, where my best 5K was 16:20. It was not even remotely close to that. You see some guys like that, Hayden Hawks, again, under 14 5K. These guys that have more speed are going to keep redefining. 14:09 at Western, I mean, Scott's 15:35 when he broke the record isn't even on the top 25 list anymore. So it's like you're looking at guys that are pushing the limits more off the starting line too. We raced a little different at Hard Rock back in those days. We hiked all the uphills, we didn't really force anything. Guys are just getting after it now. And it's evident that they're learning how to deal with the nutrition and learn how to train better, how to taper better. All those things come together. And now we have UTMB, which, when I ran it in 2000, I think it was 2007, it had been in existence for maybe 6-7 years or something. And it was still a big race. And now it's that's there's no question that's the big dance. Western used to be the track meet. Hard Rock was the Super Bowl, but the UTMB is the World Globe Bowl, if you want to call it. I don't know, but it's redefining what people can do, and the only way you find out if you can go faster is if you go out harder.
Well, it's a balance too, though, right? Like the fast and the harder and the endurance. You've been running for over 26 years. Do you sometimes look at these younger guys are out and gals that are out running amazing times and thinking, are they going to be doing this in 20 years still? Or are they just going to leave it all out in the course and then, walk away from running because they can't do it anymore because mentally or physically they're damaged? What
I won't lie to you. When you no longer can race at the front, like for me, it's kind of like, well, do I really want to keep doing this? Is it really worth it? There's been so many great runners that have had a 3 to 5 year span. Jeff Rose is one of the greatest examples. I mean, Jeff is a great dude. He was a fantastic runner. He won like every 100 he ran, just about. Super fast, but then he lost interest. Like he just started. He had some health issues, but then he lost interest after that when he couldn't really come back, and he just disappeared. A lot of runners, faster guys, they're throwing it all out there. I mean, when my first ultra, which was Wasatch, I was 20. I think I was 28, almost 29. Right. So I was a little bit older than the guys starting now. In those days, if I was on the start line for Wasatch and I was 28 years old, there might have been 2 other guys under age 30 on that start line.
Really?
Now there's like you got all these 20 to 29ers and even a couple under 20. So it's starting earlier. So you're starting earlier with these faster bodies, you know. So there's no reason it shouldn't just get faster. But will they last until they're like, if a kid starts when he's 20, let's say I started at 30, let's kid starts when he's 20, is he going to last till he's 47? I mean, that remains to be seen. Who knows, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know anybody out there. The only person I can say that's lasting is Killian Jornet. And Killian's mid 30s now or something like that. He doesn't race as much, but he's definitely top level. You know, when he shows up, he's probably the guy that's going to win. You know, so I ran my best years when I was 40 years old. You know, my fastest time in Hard Rock was 24:38, and that was 2009. So I was 42 maybe, which, you know, so like it can be done, I think, through age like 46, 47. When I got about 47, I started to get slower. And it does, again, it sort of does hurt that, oh, I can't race in the front. I mean, I won 100 last year, but it was a small race, you know. It was a really good race in the front. It doesn't matter if you run super fast or slower. It's like if it's a good race in the front, it's just as good. I mean, it was the Levitt 100 that I won, and it was, I mean, there's 100 people in the race or something, and the kid that raced, he was in front of me the entire day until I got to like mile, it was like 85-ish or something, like, and he was sitting down in a chair. I'm like, well, what are you doing? You know, he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, this is a race, dude. You know, so it was fun for me to like, all of a sudden I'm like, I'm in the lead again. Wow, this is cool, you know? So then I don't know if you want to call it putting the hammer down, but you know, I did the best I could from there, and I beat him by like 45 minutes or something. And I mean, you don't know how good that felt. I was like, wow, I can still do this. But at the end of the day, put someone real fast on the course, they're 3 hours ahead of me, you know. But it's still fun to race the smaller races in the front, and whether you win or not, it doesn't really matters to me much anymore. But till I get 51, but yeah, I mean, it's you know, like I'm going to Coldwater Rumble in 3 weeks from now, 2.5 weeks from now. And Jeff Browning's running. I ain't gonna beat Jeff. Jeff and I had a lot of great duels when we were younger, and I beat him sometimes, he beat me sometimes, so we're both pretty even. But now he's got me by 4 years younger. So like that 4 years from 53 to 57 is a massive difference. And I realize that now because I'm the guy that's 57, not 53. I don't know if Jeff realizes it yet, but he'll see. You know, he's going to get slower too. It's just how it works. You just get slower. And it's just, you know, at the end of the day, I'm still out here doing it. I still enjoy it. And that's what matters to me most, is that I can still go to a race and maybe two people might say, hey, can I get a picture with a photo with a selfie or whatever? And that's like an honor. I mean, I of course I'll always do that. You know, I'll always help people if I can and give them advice or mentor them or whatever. I think that's part of the legacy of, I've been around for so long that I've got a few tricks up my sleeve. I can probably help you become a better runner, not even by a particular training method or something, but more like just how do you race 100, you know? I mean, how do you get the most out of your body with what you have? Because some people will never run a 20-hour 100. You just won't. You know, you can't, not everybody in the world can run a 14-minute 5K, just no matter how you're training. It's just like your genetics are a massive thing. I've always had really good genetics. I mean, that's the bottom line, is that the best runners, the best athletes in any sport, genetics are 90%, man. Don't kid yourself. You know, some people can come off the couch and kill it. And some people come off the couch, work as hard as they can for years and years and just can't. They just don't feel like they get their potential. But that's just, you know, you're born with what you got. You just don't, you know, try not to treat it too harsh. Not too many beers. I've probably passed that. I've surpassed that level at this point. But I like to drink beer. But you know, it's been good. I mean, for all those people out there, Mike, if you want to run, it doesn't matter how fast you are. The fact that you're out there is what matters.
Well, genetics aside for a second, like the mental aspect of the 100-mile, you're out there for 15, 20, 25, 30 hours. How did you come to terms with the mental aspect of these long distance races? Or haven't you yet? You know,
yeah, I mean, I think the mental thing now, like, so when I ran Hard Rock last year, I ran 37:43. Pretty slow. I mean, for me, that's like super pedestrian and slow, right? But I kept telling myself, I'm out here, you know, I mean, this doesn't suck that bad. I mean, I'm at 12,000 feet. I'm wandering around in the woods and, you know, but I mean, the mental part of it is is, it's like golf. Like they'll say a lot of this between your ears. Well, I mean, golf is a hard sport, but a lot of it is between your ears. If you're not confident you can hit it, strike it well or whatever, you're probably not going to, you know. But when I have problems out on a race, I have a bad patch, because we all have bad patches. And at this point in my career anyway, I'm just like, I kind of laugh at the bad patch. Like, all right, here we go. I'm going to struggle. Thankfully, my stomach is pretty iron. I've never really had stomach issues, but we have tired, we have low points and things like that. And at this point, I'm just laugh at them. I'm like, don't quit. I mean, and I DNF'd last year at San Juan Softy. I was really tired after Hard Rocks. I bailed, but that's my excuse. but 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 the bottom line is that you have to ask yourself where you are. Like, what are you doing right now? Like you could be at the office, you could be at home yelling at your kids, or you could be having a bad day at the office or whatever, or you could be out here in the mountains in the woods, or doing something that you like to do. And if you're doing that, then you win. Like, you're a winner in your own right, because life is short. And I mean, I can't believe I'm 57. Like, I remember thinking back in the day in the 90s, 2020 is so far away, like, well, hello, it's 2025, right? And it's like, time goes by really, really fast. And if you don't take advantage of the time that you're here, then you're just another piece of you're just another piece of the puzzle in the middle of the puzzle. And in the blue sky part, there's nothing there. You want to be part of it. I think you want to be part of you want to enjoy what you're doing. Your life is not about money. We have to have some money, and we want to be comfortable, and we want to be able to do what we want to do every day to a point. But, the financial gains that you get from making millions of dollars, I mean, what is it really worth? I mean, it's worth something, but it's not, to me, it's not the most important thing. I live in this cool place now, and, whatever my retirement fund is what it is. I don't even care. Like, if I run out, I'm like, well, somebody else, I'll figure it out. I can eat beans the rest of my life. So, I mean, you figure it out when the time comes. Like, I've always been able to figure things out. Like, when problems happen, like, how do I fix this problem? And that could be part of an ultra marathon. When my, Hard Rock this year, I slept for an hour and a half at Animal Sport, because I'm like, I just need to reboot. I didn't care about my time, so I just lay down for an hour. I mean, I don't usually lay down for an hour in a race, but it didn't matter because I wasn't leading the thing. You just kind of learn how to solve your problems without involving other people. I don't rely on anyone else for anything, no matter what I do. I'm very stubborn. When I learn something, I need to learn by doing. I can read a book all day long and it'll go right in my ear and right out the other, and I won't even know what the hell I even just read. If you ask me, I was thinking about this on the way home from the grocery store today, is that these guys asked me what the last book I read, I'm going to say, well, it was my manual to my new chainsaw. because that's the last book I read. So, not knocking reading books, don't get me wrong, but it's just not my thing, so I don't go there. I don't feel like I have to do something. If someone tells me I have to do something, or I should do something, and I don't want to do it, why would I do it? How many people came to the bar and sat down, well, you should, go back to school and get a real job? I'm like, hey, honey, I just skied waist deep powder all day long for nothing. You just paid $200. You're going to go back to your job in your cubicle, and you may make a lot of money, but I'm skiing here 100 days a year on my own time. So what if I'm pouring drinks or busting tables? I'm having more fun than you are when you get back to your home, so live life first, man. Don't taking advice from others is great, but don't let others lead you to a place you don't want to be. If that makes any sense.
That does make a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's just do what you want, just like when the airbag comes down on the plane, put the mask on first, then help others. Don't be greedy. I mean, don't be selfish, but that's kind of the same idea.
So I have to ask, a couple of things that you mentioned already. So I'm 41. So I don't have the years of experience ahead of me of trail running or ultras or anything like that. But I do have a love for beer. I do have a love for pizza.
Oh yeah.
Are there any tips that you would give a new to ultra running runner? I mean, I'm very, very early in just even doing low kilometer runs, but somebody who would be eventually aspiring to make those distances longer and longer. Is there, like, what would you say to somebody new? I know the people that you're coaching right now are more elite athletes than that, but somebody just breaking in, what would you say to them?
Well, don't be so obsessed with the watch. Like if you like when someone comes from road running to trail running, um, maybe on the average road, let's just say you average a 10-minute mile on the road, right? And you go to the trail, it's not going to be 10 minutes a mile. Even if it's flat on dirt, it's going to be 11 or 12 or whatever. Don't get so obsessed with the watch and the data, because ultimately, as an old school guy, I had a Casio watch. I still have a Casio watch, but it's not so much about the data. I mean, data matters. Don't get me wrong. David has proven that. Others have proven that. But if you're out there to just learn to get into ultras, um, you know, put the numbers aside. And when you're running on, I like to say run on feel, right? So there are certain days when, like I said, some days I'm like, I walk, I'm tired, whatever, I don't feel good. Some days you feel good. Take advantage of the days you feel good. That's kind of mostly been my motto, is take advantage of your good days. And then on your days when it's not so good, okay, this ends up being an easy rest day. So your body is sort of telling you like, oh, you need rest today. Your body's saying, hey, today's the day you're up tempo, you go a little faster, you run a little harder. I mean, you're not going to get better if you run slow all the time. You do have to run harder to get better. Your VO2 max has to increase, or you're just, it's going to be the same all the time. You've got to work at it, but you don't have to get so obsessed by your Strava numbers and all that stuff. It's just a matter of like, what does your body feel like? When you get into a race, so many people say, oh, I'm intimidated, I'm afraid of hard rock, I'm afraid of this tough race or whatever. Go back to what I said earlier. Is like, well, you could be heck at the cubicle, you could be hiking up a mountain, you could be suffering going up that mountain. Something might hurt because it's going to hurt. But think of where you are and what you're doing, and why is it better than going to the office to make money? You got to enjoy what you're doing. If you enjoy it, then it doesn't matter how fast or slow you are. Most of my friends, my wife was never a runner. She started running. She's finished a couple hundreds now, believe it or not. You'd never guess that she was a runner, but she did it because she was like, I like being out here, and I think I can do it. I mean, she finished Wasatch and Bear. I mean, those are hard races. Just under the cutoff, but that's all that mattered. I mean, you have to go out there and enjoy it. If you're out there thinking like you're so stressed out about, I've got a goal time. If anyone has a goal time in a 100-miler and it's their first 100, okay, well, you don't throw it out the window, but you're like, well, the tunnel, and a good example is Tunnel Hill, right? It's a pretty flat 100. It's easy in terms of terrain, but just because your marathon time is 3:20, which is pretty good, doesn't mean you're going to run 16:50 at a 100-miler. It's a whole different ballgame. So you can't put a time on anything from previous times if you haven't gone that distance before. If you're going to hire someone to help you, at least in my opinion, is like if they don't have the experience if they're training you to run a 100-miler and they've never run 100 themselves, you get all the data you want, but I'll tell you what, at mile 75, when you're suffering, it's just the experiences that I've had. I can say like, hey, this you're probably gonna have a bad patch. And guess what? You got to talk yourself out of the bad patch. You can talk yourself out of bad patches. You can always, and Dave Horton said it very well, it doesn't always get worse. I've had so many races, even like 50Ks or 50 miles that you can feel like shit for 20 mile 20 to 30, mile 60 to 70. All of a sudden, something lights up under your butt, and all of a sudden now you're on fire, and it's like you feel good. So you can get out of those holes. That's something to always remember. Like if you go run a 100-miler, Mark, and you're struggling, stomach hurts or whatever's going on, just remember that, just keep moving forward. As Brian Powell says, relentless forward progress, right? If you keep moving forward, it doesn't always mean things deteriorate all the time. You can get better. I mean, the Appalachian Trail, like what Tara did and even like when I did it, once you get your trail legs on something that long, I mean, that's a different experience, but you get so far into that, 3 weeks into it, your legs sort of come around and they don't feel tired anymore. I mean, they do these heavy logs, but they don't, it's just different. Like you your body adapts, your body adapts to the rigors and the problems. And then eventually, like, if you can get through the first 3 weeks of something that long, then you're probably going to be reasonably successful at the end. And I communicated with Tara a couple times this year while she was on the trail, just brief texts a couple times. And she was experiencing that too. She got better, Karel Saab, when he did it, he got better as he went. Things don't always get worse. I mean, that's Dave's quote, but I'll take it for now.
There's so much wisdom there, Karl, for sure. Here,
someday I'll write a book.
But you might not read it though.
No, I won't read it. I wrote it. I don't need to read it.
The manual of chainsaw and ultra running. Maybe you can title it. Here's where my mind goes. You talked about all your buddies and all these trail runners you ran with, and you're like, has there ever been a trail runner that is just your op? Like the person that you saw at the start, like, oh, I don't like this guy. I want to kick his arse every time.
I hate to throw names out, but I don't dislike anyone. Don't get me wrong here, okay? I'm not a big fan of David Goggins. His message is clear. I mean, I get that. I'm a fan of that. I'm totally a fan of like, shut the F up and go, kind of message. Yeah. But I'm not a big fan of the vulgarism part of it. But it's not like, David, I first met David at a McNaughton 100 in, I think it was Indiana. And super cool dude. I mean, he's a good guy. Don't get me wrong. He's not a bad guy. But it's like, so I don't really like that vulgar part of it. But in terms of like racing against others, guys that I'd wanted to beat, I don't know if I have that guy because in my days we got to, like I said, we got to the start line. We wanted to race each other. I mean, if Hal Kerner dropped his water bottle down the ravine, I'm not going to go get it for him. I mean, I said that before, like, hey pal, you go the wrong way. Sorry. But I mean, I've seen guys go the wrong way that were too far ahead of me to yell to them. Like, well, I'm not going to go chase them down. But that's just competition. But at the end of the day, we've always been, when I get to the finish line, even there were so many times I finished Wasatch where whether I won the race or come in second, third, or whatever, I'd go home and sleep and come back to the finish line and watch the inspiring runners are the last 2 hours of 100. Because those people, and go to Leadville. I don't know if you guys have ever gone to Leadville and watched the end of the race. Half the people are bawling in the last hour, because they finished it. That was their goal to finish. And those are the real heroes of the sport. The people that look up to the fastest people, I mean, that's the fastest people. It's really cool. But the heroes are the slower people because those are the ones that really drive the energy behind the sport. And to see any last hour of 100, they always call it the golden hour, right? It's like, I mean, I've been in tears watching people come across the line. I mean, I've seen guys come across the line at Wasatch 100% sideways, 90-degree angle body, and those guys, I mean, that had to hurt, man. I mean, they were walking like that for 10 hours, and that kind of shit is like, wow, I haven't been quite there yet. Hopefully not, but, I mean, anyway, those are the people that really inspire me the most. I like the slower. When I saw my wife finish Wasatch, 35:38 was her time, so 22 minutes she had to spare. And we have a photo of her kind of coming in, and it's just, you can see it in her eyes, like it was really, really special, It was pretty moving, I mean, that's the people that go way above their abilities or think it's above their ability. They realize they can do it. I mean, so many runners in the middle of the pack, back of the pack, may not even look like a runner to you. You would never know. And then they might be in the office the next day or next week talking to their people in their office. And they're like, we're in the Wasatch 100. And they're like, huh? You? Yeah, but it's like, put your mind to something. Don't quit. It can be done by just about anybody.
I'm with you. Like, I've never done the 100-mile. I've done 250s. I can't even fathom going double that distance.
150 is like 100 miler is like 350s.
350s, yeah.
Kind of what it feels like.
It's never going to happen. I like my sleep too much there, Karl.
Yeah, I hear that.
The last hour, I did the JFK 2 years ago, my first time, and I was coming in under the cutoff, and there's some gritty people out there getting it done.
like you said, you saw some folks, crooked over, bent over.
Mhm.
I had the one guy I was walking next to, or power hiking. I was trying to keep him like away from the center line because he was veering kind of towards the center line of traffic. I'm like, no, come over here on the side of the road.
Yeah.
But we got it done, and I think that speaks to the trail running community. So I love your answer to that question, because that's the essence of you, of the speed goat. Friendly
Yeah.
competition with your friends and having a
Yeah.
great attitude means everything. And you touched on it too, like like the DNA, the makeup, your genetics, but it's also that mental aspect too that you shared, Karl. And I
You
think
got to
that's
have it. You got to have it in your head. If you don't,
yeah.
why are you doing it? I mean, I wish back, I wish I was a better golfer. I mean, I'm not bad. I'm like 6 handicap. I hit it pretty good, but when I was in high school, I'm like, oh, I'm going to be on the senior tour. Like, yeah, I don't think so, pal. In order to get that good, you've got to go into all the data and all. There's so many things with golf. It's so hard, but if it's in your head and you like to do it, it doesn't matter how fast or slow you are, man. It's just, you see these things sometimes on social media, like I'm still a runner, or some guy that's overweight or whatever. He's right. He's still a runner. Doesn't matter if it does a 5K in an hour. Who cares? He's still out there. I mean, there's a lot of people out there, and I hope I can inspire people to get out there, just to get off your butt and do it, because, it takes, if you've never run before and you say, I'm going to become a runner, well, it's going to take you a month to get that addiction to kick in, just like anything else. But once the addiction is there, I mean, it's as bad as being, an alcoholic or a drug addict or something, because it's just that's your drug. Running is my drug that I just love to be out in the woods, and whether it's East Coast, mountains, West, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's part of my DNA, and I don't know any different. Be easy to walk away and retire, but like I said, I might get things done around my house, but who cares? My addiction is in the mountains.
So have you, in terms of completing your 100s, are you putting, 3, 4, 5 year time frame, anything like that, or is it just as what feels good each year in accomplishing that?
Yeah, I think from a time frame perspective, I have 14 to go.
Yeah.
My hope is to do Coldwater, love it, Antelope Island, boom, 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 next 3 months. That'll give me 89. Give myself a little break. Scout Mountain 100 in June is 90. Cascade Crest, if I get in, is 91. Maybe I Am Tough 92. I mean, I could, in theory, if I don't get hurt. I mean, a lot of crap happens when you're 57. But if I don't get hurt, I could have it not next year, but the following summer at Wasatch. That would be an ideal situation. If I don't sort of reach that, and I feel like, well, I'm 4 or 5 short, I'll wait to the following year, because, like I said, I'd like Wasatch to be the 100th, not the 102nd or the 99th, just because. I mean, I'm not really a sentimental guy on anything really, but I think that would be, open the book, close the book, on the 100-mile thing. The only thing I regret now is that I've had 14 DNFs. I would be there, do I know? That I could get shit done.
You can't look back. You can't look back.
You can't go back. Every time I've DNF'd in the last couple of years, I'm like, that's one more I got to do again. Why did I stop? But
starts, Karl. You got 14 starts.
Right.
Sorry, 100 starts. You just got
100 starts, but that doesn't count for 100. So yes, I mean, maybe a year. I mean, in theory, like roughly 2 years.
It's wild.
But again, that's you have a lot of little niggles that happen. Like I only run like 40, 45 miles a week now, and I've done that for the last number of years. And you wouldn't think you'd be able to run hundreds on that, but I know how to do it. So when I go to the race, it's like, whatever. I'm not nervous. I sleep fine the night before. But you get these little niggles here and there, and every once in a while your calf might be a little jacked, your groin's a little weird or something. And you don't want to go to the start line with that kind of niggle, because more than likely you're not going to be able to run it out. Not that far,
Yeah.
So my goal now is to, between the races, stay healthy. Don't overdo your training, because you've done plenty of miles in your days,
The shoe. So when it came to designing the shoe, were there any elements that you would not compromise over? How was that development process? And then the shoe is the first thing. I understand that you also have a beer. So are there certain elements there that were the same as well that you just couldn't compromise on?
So we'll start with the shoe. So with the shoe, the whole thing for me was to have a soft, cushy ride and really good traction. I mean, that was the number one thing. And I really wanted Hoka to just sort of work together and try to make a good upper with it, a reasonably soft tongue. But from there, it was sort of all them on how they really designed that. Like, because there's so much technical data on the thickness of the foam and the density of the foam and things like that. That's where the technical guys come in. But it really mostly was about traction and soft, cushy, and basically, hopefully, that it feels good right out of the box. And I think the 5, the 2, 3, 4, 5 have generally accomplished that. The 6 is a little different; it's a little stiffer. But if you let it, if you let it break in just a little bit, like 20 miles worth of break in, it gets even better. So on that regard, yeah, I mean that's with the shoe. It's not like I told them what to do and they did it, but I mean, like anything else, you have to you got to work with the team to it's a team thing, it's not just one guy. But as far as the beer, I would love to have a Speedgoat Pale Ale. If there's any breweries out there that really want to collaborate on that one, let me know. It's funny, when I was coming home from the Black Hills 100 2 years ago, I stopped off I was driving home. I was in Wyoming or something, and I was stopped at a hotel, and I actually stayed in a hotel. And I went to the bar, and what do I see on the tap handle? The Speedgoat Golden Ale. And I'm like, come on, man, no way, right? So I'm like, initially I ordered something else first, and then I saw the tap handle, and I was just like, well, I've got to have one of those, or 2 or 3 or whatever. And I asked the bartender, I said, hey, is there any chance I could maybe step behind the bar and just get a picture of me pulling that tap? And it'll be classic, right? But she's like, no, well, I'll ask the manager, but I doubt it, because legal reasons, I can't just go back, So, but she pulled the tap off, and she had me hold the tap in my hand, and I took a picture. And that is a dream. I mean, if the Speedgoat Pale Ale would be a pale ale, it would be maybe a little bit cleaner than her Sierra Nevada Pale Ale type of flavor. I don't like super hoppy beers. I like kind of just a little. It doesn't have to be super strong. Those are 5% or something like that. But I mean, that would be really cool to have that. It would be cool to walk down the grocery aisle and see the Speedgoat Pale Ale. I mean, that would be like, the Speedgoat shoe is pretty amazing, but this Pale Ale might even top that.
That's right. Well, it's just like the beginning, and you take like the KISS approach, right? And just have so many different, there'll be a board game, then there'll be the tracksuit, just a little bit of everything, right? Just the merchandise.
Yeah, I mean, we got a waist pack. I mean, Ultraspire's got a waist pack. Madronmax socks, those guys make socks for me. And those 2 collaborations were, like I said, they were with me for 20 years. And whether or not those guys made a pack or a sock, I'd still be with them, because those 2 guys supported me, like Bryce Thatcher at Ultraspire. I'm like, hey, can you sew this up for me? You send him a pack, he gets it in 2 days, he sews it up, boom, he sends it back, however you want it, every time. I mean, that's cool. Awesome. It's for those guys, it's not about the money, it's just about the, like, why bounce around, So but yeah, the beer thing would be like the ultimate. I mean, that may be the pinnacle of all. I mean, how many athletes have a beer named after them?
Well, we'll do what we can to help you out with that. So
you let me know, man. Well, maybe we'll work a little deal out of something. I like that.
I was just going to say, Karl, thank you. Thank you for joining the Renegade Podcast. This has been amazing. The time has flown by, and we'd love to have you back on to get even deeper into the Karl story. Thank you very much. We're big fans, and we are going to be cheering you on for your 100 100s. And yeah, like Mark said, we'll see what we can do. Any Renegades out there running a brewery need the Speedgoat beer, nice pale ale.
Yeah, fly me in. I'll drink as many as I can. I mean, Renegade Podcast, you guys are great. I mean, it's like I said, every time I get a podcast opportunity now, it's a little more rare than it used to be, but that's okay. It just means it just feels good, and just to tell my story to some people that haven't heard it before is it's always cool, and hopefully some people can think about their own lives too and say, hey, you don't have to be like him or nothing like that, but think about what your next step is, before you step into the real grind of the city and stuff like that, and try to get out of the concrete jungle if you get a chance.
Awesome. Well, we just appreciate your time so much. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very
Thanks
welcome.
again.
Anytime, guys. If you need me, just let me know.
Thank you for listening to the Renegade Podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Send us a note. runegadepodcast@gmail.com. That's RUNEGADE podcast@gmail.com. We'd appreciate a like and a subscribe. You can check out our YouTube channel. You can follow us on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. And remember, in a world of runners, be a renegade.